The night at the Aurelia shimmered with gold light and arrogance. Crystal glasses chimed like fragile bells, violins hummed under chandeliers, and every breath in the room smelled faintly of money. At the corner table sat Gideon Voss, the billionaire everyone feared. 40, tailored within an inch of perfection, and utterly untouchable. His face was the kind that appeared on magazine covers beside words like visionary and shark. The staff whispered his name like a warning. He's here again. Don't mess up tonight. And right in his path was Lena Carter, a waitress wearing a soft black mask that covered half her face. Most people never asked why. They assumed vanity, or perhaps a scar. But no one knew the truth, and Lena never offered it. She only moved quietly between tables, graceful, invisible, surviving. When she reached Gideon's table, she bowed slightly. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to start with sparkling or still water?" He didn't look up. "Just get me the still. Ems." Lena nodded and turned. Her tray balanced effortlessly. But as she set the glass down, a single drop of condensation slipped from her hand and rolled onto his immaculate sleeve. The silence that followed felt like a crack in the world. Gideon looked up, cold, calculating, and his voice cut through the room. "Unbelievable. Are you blind under that mask?" Every head turned. The pianist stopped, mid-note. Lena froze, her pulse pounding in her ears. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. I didn't mean." "Didn't mean?" He laughed, a cruel sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Maybe if you weren't hiding your face like some Halloween freak, you'd see what you're doing." A couple at the next table gasped. A man whispered, "That's too far." Lena's hands shook, but her voice stayed calm. "Sir, please. I was just trying to serve you properly." "Properly?" Gideon sneered. "A place like this should hire staff who look the part, not someone who scares the guests before dessert." "Oh." The maître d', red-faced, hurried over. "Mr. Voss, my sincerest apologies. She's new. It won't happen again." Lena swallowed the burn in her throat. She didn't cry. She didn't defend herself. She simply said, "Excuse me," and turned away before anyone could see the pain flicker behind her eyes. As she passed the bar, she heard a man at another table mutter, "People like him think money makes them beautiful." Gideon caught the words but ignored them. He leaned back in his chair, smirking, but the smirk didn't feel right. Something about her voice quiet, steady, unbroken, stuck in his head like a splinter. At the far end of the room, Lena ducked into the staff corridor and pressed her back to the cold wall. Her breath came short and fast. Her reflection in the metal door shimmered a young woman with tired eyes, a soft mouth, and a mask that hid everything but her dignity. "Ugly," she whispered to herself. "If only he knew." She touched the edge of her mask. Behind it were the scars, the story no one wanted to hear, the fire, the loss, the reason she couldn't afford to quit even after being humiliated. Inside the dining room, laughter resumed, wine flowed, and Gideon Voss moved on with his meal, as if nothing had happened. But the damage was done. Because somewhere in the room, someone had recorded the moment on their phone, every word, every cruel sneer, and before sunrise, the world would see it all. And when it did, nothing about Gideon Voss's perfect life would ever be the same again. Morning light in Queens wasn't golden like in the movies, it was pale, tired, the color of unpaid bills and cold coffee. Lena Carter woke before dawn, the alarm on her cracked phone buzzing like a mosquito she couldn't swat away. Her small apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of the fridge and the shallow breaths of her younger brother, Eli, sleeping in the next room. She tiptoed past his door. His face was peaceful, the thin oxygen tube under his nose a cruel reminder of everything she worked for. 16 years old, and still trying to recover from the same fire that had changed both their lives forever. Lena poured water into a dented kettle, staring out the tiny kitchen window. The city below was waking delivery trucks, shouting vendors, the world spinning without mercy. She rubbed the bridge of her nose, trying to push away the echo of last night. "Maybe if you weren't hiding your face like some Halloween freak." The words burned worse than the flames ever had. She pulled her uniform from the hook by the door. It smelled faintly of sanitizer and desperation. The mask, a soft black fabric she'd washed by hand, sat folded on the counter. She hesitated before picking it up. The scars underneath weren't monstrous, not anymore. But people didn't see scars, they saw stories they didn't want to hear. Pity, fear, curiosity. She'd learned it was easier to give them mystery instead. The kettle whistled. She poured 2 mugs, 1 weak coffee, 1 cocoa mix thinned with milk. Eli stirred in his room, calling out, "Morning, sis." She smiled, carrying the cup in. "You're supposed to be sleeping." He grinned sleepily. "You're supposed to be rich and famous by now. Guess we both failed." She laughed an honest, soft laugh that belonged to an older life. "Drink this before it gets cold." He studied her face for a moment. "Rough night? You could say that. Someone say something about, you know?" Lena hesitated. "Yeah. Someone said something." He sat up, his tone suddenly protective. "You want me to go talk to them? I can still walk to that place." She cut him off gently. "Eli, you can barely walk to the mailbox." He sighed, deflated. "You shouldn't let people talk to you like that." "I don't have the luxury of caring," she said quietly. "We need the insurance payment next month. You need your treatments." Silence stretched between them. The city outside grew louder. Finally, Eli whispered, "You're the bravest person I know." Lena looked at him, the weight of love and exhaustion filling her chest. "No, I'm just surviving. That's different." Her phone buzzed. A message from her coworker. "You're trending. Check Twitter." Her stomach dropped. She opened the link and there it was. A shaky video filmed from the restaurant. Gideon Voss's voice, sharp as a knife. "A place like this should hire staff who look the part." The clip had over 500,000 views. Comments flooded the screen. "Who is she? Disgusting how he talked to her. She handled that like a queen." Lena set the phone down slowly. The mask in her hand suddenly felt heavier. Eli leaned over. "That's you, isn't it?" She nodded. "Yeah, that's me." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time they see who you really are." She didn't answer. She just stared at the screen, the reflection of her masked face caught in the cracked glass, and wondered what would happen if the world ever saw the truth beneath it. Because the truth wasn't ugly, it was unforgettable. By evening, the Aurelia glittered again like nothing had happened. The chandeliers sparkled, the wine glasses gleamed, and the air smelled of truffle oil and old money. But under the polish, something had changed. Everyone had seen the video. Everyone was whispering. The maitre d', Thomas, barked orders. His smile stretched thin. "People, I don't care what you saw online. Tonight, we have Senator Marks and 2 film producers in the private lounge. Keep your heads down. Do your jobs." "Oh." Lena walked through the back entrance, head lowered. The same uniform, the same black mask, but a different kind of silence followed her curiosity instead of indifference. A few co-workers looked away in embarrassment. Others nodded in quiet respect. "Hey," whispered Maria, her friend from pastry. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Lena lied. "They're calling him the masked waitress billionaire bully online. You're like everywhere. You could sue him, you know." I don't want money," Lena said softly. "I just want peace." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Peace doesn't trend, honey." Lena forced a small smile, grabbed a tray of silverware, and pushed through the swinging door into the dining hall. The first thing she saw was the glass everywhere, polished surfaces that reflected her shape 1,000 times. She hated it. She hated how easy it was to feel trapped inside her own reflection. The guests were arriving, laughing too loudly, dressed too perfectly. She recognized the type: hedge fund managers, trophy wives, and bored millionaires trying to buy meaning with fine wine. She'd seen this world for years, and it never stopped amazing her how little joy lived inside so much beauty. At table 9, a group of executives whispered to each other when they saw her. One woman leaned to her husband. "That's her, the girl from the video." Lena pretended not to hear. "Would you like to start with wine this evening?" The man smirked. "Sure. Whatever Mr. Voss is drinking tonight." Her fingers froze for just a second. Gideon. He was here again. She turned and saw him alone, at his corner table. Same perfect suit, same icy calm. Except tonight, his confidence looked forced, brittle. He scrolled through his phone like he was searching for something to anchor him. Thomas approached her quietly. "Lena, I know what he did was awful, but he's still a regular. I'm assigning you to his table." Her heart skipped. "You can't be serious. I can't risk anyone else messing up around him. You're steady." She swallowed. "You mean invisible?" "Just keep it professional," Thomas said, walking away. She approached Gideon's table slowly, tray balanced in her hand. "Good evening, sir." He looked up, startled by her voice. For a second, neither spoke. The faint hum of jazz filled the silence. "You're still working here," he said finally. "Rent's due every month," she replied evenly. His jaw tightened. "Look, about last night. I'm not interested in apologies." He blinked. "Then what do you want?" Lena's tone didn't waver. "Just to do my job. You'll have the salmon or the steak?" He almost smiled, not from amusement, but from disbelief. "You're something else." "I'm just a waitress, Mr. Voss." "No," he said quietly. "You're not." She turned away before he could say more, her pulse hammering. Across the room, Maria was watching, eyes wide. As Lena passed the bar, whispers followed her again, but this time they weren't mocking. They were fascinated. The mask, the story, the billionaire, it was drama made for the internet age. And every pair of eyes in that glittering room was now on her. None of them knew the secret behind that mask, or how close she was to exposing one that could ruin him completely. Dinner service pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, tense, and fragile. Every clink of glass, every whispered laugh, carried a quiet edge. The Aurelia was full, but the air felt heavier than usual. It wasn't just the smell of butter and money anymore. It was the weight of gossip. Gideon Voss could feel it too. He didn't need to scroll through his phone to know the headlines. "Billionaire mocks waitress for wearing a mask." His PR team had spent all day spinning it, calling it a misunderstanding. But the damage was done. Every camera phone in the city was pointed at him now, waiting for another slip. He looked up and saw her Lena Carter moving between tables with quiet precision. The black mask, the calm posture, the unbroken composure. She didn't look humiliated. She looked untouchable. That, somehow, made him angrier. At his table sat two men in expensive suits. Richard Kane, a venture capitalist with a laugh like a jackhammer, and Miles Drew, a slick media producer who lived for scandal. They were there to discuss Gideon's new tech merger, a deal worth billions. "So," Miles said, swirling his wine, "tell me, Voss, did your PR team teach you how to apologize to waitresses yet?" Richard burst out laughing. "Man, that clip is everywhere. My wife showed it to me at breakfast." Gideon's jaw tightened. "Let's focus on business." But Miles smirked. "Business is image, my friend. People love a villain unless the villain starts to look weak." Lena approached just then, tray balanced with quiet confidence. "Good evening, gentlemen. Are we ready to order?" Miles grinned. "Yeah, I'll have whatever you recommend, sweetheart." Lena's tone stayed polite. "We have seared duck with fig glaze tonight. It's very popular." "Sounds perfect," Miles said, still eyeing her mask. "But tell me, what's the story with that thing? You hiding from paparazzi or something?" The air thinned. Even Richard stopped laughing. Gideon spoke, low but sharp. "That's enough." Miles looked surprised. "Relax, man. I'm just making conversation." "Conversation doesn't have to be cruel," Gideon said. Lena blinked, quiet shock flickering behind her eyes. She nodded once and stepped away. Miles leaned back, smirking. "Wow. Look who found a conscience overnight." Gideon ignored him, but his thoughts churned. What was he doing? Why had he said that? Defending her didn't make sense. Yet the image of her eyes behind that mask, steady, wounded, fearless, wouldn't leave him. Across the room, Maria whispered to Lena near the service station. "Did he just defend you?" Lena shrugged. "Maybe he's scared of losing investors." Maria tilted her head. "Or maybe he's human after all." Lena gave a small, humorless smile. That'd be the biggest plot twist of all. Ugh. In the kitchen, Chef Anton slammed a pan down. Order for table 9 duck, steak, risotto, move. Lena took the plates, her hands steady, though her mind wasn't. Something had shifted in that dining room, something unpredictable. When she returned to Gideon's table, she placed the plates carefully, one by one. He looked up. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Thank you, he said quietly. She froze. No arrogance, no bite, just sincerity. You're welcome, she replied, then turned away before her voice could tremble. Behind her, Miles muttered, Guess she's your PR strategy now. Gideon didn't respond. His reflection in the wine glass looked older, smaller, almost guilty. Across the room, Lena exhaled, gripping the edge of the counter. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure who the real villain was anymore. But she was about to find out because some fires never stay buried, and this one was about to burn again. By Friday night, the Aurelia was a storm in disguise. Cameras lurked outside the entrance, journalists pretending to be diners, influencers angling for a scandal. The story had become entertainment, and everyone wanted a front-row seat. Inside, Lena Carter moved like a ghost, steady, silent, unseen. Her mask hid her face, but not her exhaustion. The restaurant manager, Thomas, had begged her to stay despite the attention. You're part of the story now, he'd said. If you quit, it looks like we're guilty. She didn't care about image. She cared about rent, about Eli's medicine, about surviving one more month. But tonight, she felt eyes burning holes through her every move. Gideon Voss was back, of course. Same corner table, different energy. His posture was stiff, his tie slightly loosened. The arrogance was cracked, replaced by something that looked a lot like shame, but pride held it together just enough to keep him from admitting it. Lena approached with a tray. Good evening, Mr. Voss. He nodded, avoiding her gaze. Still water, and the ribeye. Medium rare. Yes, sir. When she turned to leave, a loud, slurred voice cut through the soft jazz. Hey, that's her. Head swiveled. A man in an expensive navy suit stood near the bar. Blake Monroe, a drunk hedge fund manager who fancied himself untouchable. His phone glowed with her viral clip paused on the screen. You're the mask girl, right? The one the billionaire called ugly. The restaurant went silent. Lena froze mid-step. Blake stumbled toward her, grin wide, eyes glassy. Let's see what the fuss is about. Sir, Thomas said, rushing over. Please return to your seat. But Blake waved him off. Relax. I'm just curious. What's she hiding under there, huh? Maybe she's gorgeous. Maybe she's... Enough. Gideon's voice cut in, low and lethal. Blake laughed. Oh, you again. The knight in Armani armor. You've got nerve, Voss. You humiliate her, then you play hero. The guests murmured. Phones lifted discreetly. Lena's heart pounded. Please, she said quietly. Don't make this worse. Blake ignored her. In one reckless motion, he reached out and grabbed the edge of her mask. Gasps rippled through the room. Stop, Gideon barked, stepping forward. Too late. The mask came off. For a split second, everything was still. Then whispers started. Her scars, faint but visible, caught the chandelier light lines of fire frozen in skin. Not grotesque, not disfiguring, but undeniably real. Lena stood motionless, barefaced before 100 staring eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't hide. She just breathed. Gideon turned on Blake, voice sharp as glass. Apologize. Now. Blake scoffed. For what? She's not even. Gideon's fist hit his jaw before he could finish. The impact echoed across the marble floor. Blake stumbled back, crashing into a table of wine glasses. Chaos erupted. Guests shouted. Someone screamed. Thomas called for security. Lena's mask lay on the floor, black against the white tile. She stared at it, then slowly bent down, picked it up, and held it in her trembling hand. Are you okay? Gideon asked, breathing hard. She looked at him, eyes clear and cold. You don't get to ask me that. He opened his mouth but couldn't find words. Lena turned, walked straight through the crowd, and out the front door. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted her name. She didn't stop. Outside, the night air hit her face, sharp and cold, but for the first time, she didn't hide from it. Inside the Aurelia, the empire of Gideon Voss had just cracked and everyone in the world was watching it fall. The video hit the internet before midnight. By sunrise, it had been viewed more than 20 million times. Headlines screamed across every platform. Billionaire defends waitress he once insulted, but is it redemption or PR? Clips replayed endlessly the slap of Blake's fall, the flash of Lena's uncovered face, the look of quiet defiance in her eyes. For Lena, it wasn't just a viral story. It was exposure raw, brutal, irreversible. By morning, reporters crowded the sidewalk outside her apartment building in Queens. She peeked through the blinds and saw the cameras waiting like vultures. Her stomach twisted. Her brother, Eli, sat on the couch, watching the coverage on TV. "Lena," he said softly, "you look strong. Everyone online is on your side." She shook her head. "They don't know me, Eli. They just know the clip." "They know enough," he insisted. "They saw how you stood there. You didn't hide." Her phone buzzed with messages from strangers, journalists, old co-workers. Some offered sympathy, others demanded interviews. But one message made her stop. It was from him, Gideon Voss. "Please let me talk to you. Not about PR, about what happened." Lena stared at the text. For a long time, she didn't move. Then she typed one word back. "Why?" The reply came instantly. "Because I owe you the truth." That afternoon, she agreed to meet, but not at the Aurelia. She chose a public cafe near the river, someplace normal, human. When she arrived, Gideon was already there, dressed down in a grey sweater instead of a suit. He looked smaller somehow, less like the man who ruled boardrooms, and more like someone trying to breathe again. He stood when she approached. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not here for an apology," she said, sitting down. "I know." His voice was quiet. "I'm here to give you one anyway." Lena crossed her arms. "You don't get to fix what happened with words, Mr. Voss. I'm not trying to fix it. I just—" He hesitated, then met her eyes. "You reminded me of someone I hurt a long time ago." She frowned. "You humiliate women often?" He exhaled, shaking his head. "No, I mean, my mother. She was burned in an accident when I was a kid. I couldn't stand to look at her after. She never forgave me, and I never forgave myself." Lena didn't respond right away. The cafe hummed softly around them, cups clinking, distant chatter. Normal life. "You saw your mother in me," she said finally. "Yes. And instead of showing compassion, you punished her again." His voice cracked. "I did. And I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness." She stared out the window. "You know what's funny? People think my mask was hiding scars, but it was hiding peace. Because behind it, no one could touch me. No one could make me feel small." He nodded slowly. "And now," she looked back at him, her voice steady, "now the whole world has seen my face, and they can't take it from me anymore." Gideon leaned forward. "You said something that night, right after I called you ugly. You said, if only he knew. What did you mean?" Lena's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "I meant you didn't know what beauty was." Her words hit like a quiet explosion. Gideon swallowed hard. Lena stood, picking up her bag. "You don't have to find me again, Mr. Voss. The next chapter of your life isn't in proving you've changed. It's in actually changing." She turned to leave, sunlight catching the faint lines on her cheek, scars that looked, in that light, almost like gold. And for the first time, Gideon Voss didn't see a waitress. He saw the truth he'd been running from his entire life. 2 weeks later, the Aurelia reopened after a temporary renovation. Everyone knew it was a cover. The restaurant had become the epicenter of a social earthquake that rattled through Wall Street and every news outlet in America. Outside, cameras flashed. Inside, the chandeliers glowed like they were trying to erase the memory of what had happened there. But memories don't polish away. At table 7, the same table where he'd once called her ugly Gideon Voss sat alone, waiting. No phone, no entourage, no armor. Just a man who had lost the right to hide behind power. The door opened. Conversations dimmed. Lena Carter stepped inside. No mask this time. Her scars caught the golden light, soft against her skin. She wasn't dressed like a waitress. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pinned back. The hush that fell over the room wasn't about shock anymore. It was respect. The manager, Thomas, approached her nervously. "Lena, you didn't tell us you'd be coming tonight." "Oh." She smiled faintly. "I'm not here to eat. I'm here to end something." She walked toward Gideon's table, every step measured, calm, unstoppable. When she reached him, he stood, uncertain whether to sit or bow. "You look well," he said quietly. "I look like myself," she replied, for the first time in a long time. He gestured to the chair. "Please." She sat, folding her hands. Around them, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. "I shut down Voss Holdings' cosmetic branch," he said. "The same one that used models to sell fake perfection. It's over." "That doesn't erase what you said to me," she replied. "I know, but it's a start." Lena studied him for a moment. The man in front of her wasn't the cold billionaire from weeks ago. His eyes were tired, but clear, honest. "You once told me I scared the guests," she said. "Now they stare because they see me. Do you see the difference?" He nodded slowly. "I do now." "Then maybe that's something." A silence settled between them, heavy, human, real. "I didn't call you here to apologize again," Gideon said finally. "I wanted to ask if you'd help me with something." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Help you?" "I started a foundation," he explained, "for survivors, burn victims, abuse victims, anyone who's been told they're not enough. It's not about image. It's about giving back what I took from people like you." She looked at him, skeptical, but curious. "And what do you want from me?" He smiled faintly. "Nothing. Except your voice." Her lips parted slightly. "You want me to speak for you?" "No," he said. "I want you to speak for them, the ones who still hide." Lena leaned back, studying him. Her voice softened. "You really did change, didn't you?" "I'm trying to," he said. "And trying means admitting I was wrong." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded. "All right, I'll do it. But not for you, for the ones who think scars make them less." He extended his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His handshake was firm but humble. Around them, a few diners began to clap softly. The sound grew, rippling through the room, not applause for wealth or power, but for something rarer, accountability. Lena rose to leave, pausing by the door. She turned back to him one last time. "You were right about one thing, Mr. Voss," she said. "Beauty has power. You just didn't know where to look." Outside, the cameras flashed again, but this time, the world wasn't photographing a billionaire. It was photographing a woman who had turned her scars into light and walked away free. Rain streaked the glass windows of the Aurelia as the city pulsed outside horns, thunder, and the low murmur of traffic. Inside, the restaurant glowed like a cathedral of redemption. It was the night of the Phoenix Gala, the first charity event of the foundation Gideon and Lena had built together. Every table shimmered under candlelight. Cameras waited discreetly at the entrance. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't on Gideon Voss's fortune. It was on what he was finally trying to rebuild. Lena stood near the stage, her notes clutched in her hand. She'd been asked to give the keynote speech. Public speaking terrified her more than any camera ever had. But this was her moment. Not for fame, not for pity, but for truth. "Breathe," said Maria, standing beside her, now a volunteer for the foundation. "You've faced worse." Lena smiled nervously. "Worse doesn't come with microphones." Maria chuckled. "You'll be fine. Just tell them what you told me, that scars aren't shame. They're stories." Across the room, Gideon watched her. He wasn't the commanding figure he once was. His confidence had softened into quiet humility. He no longer wore arrogance like armor, just a plain black suit and a look of genuine respect. The master of ceremonies tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's event isn't about wealth, it's about resilience. Please welcome the woman whose courage inspired it all, Miss Lena Carter." Applause filled the room as Lena stepped forward. Her heart raced, her palms damp, but her eyes steady. She looked out over the crowd faces of power, of pain, of hope, and began. "When I was 16, she said, her voice clear, "a fire changed everything. It took my home, my mother, and my face. For years I thought my worth burned with them. I wore a mask not to hide my scars, but to survive your stares." The audience sat motionless. Cameras clicked quietly. "But then," she continued, "someone tried to humiliate me for that mask. And instead of breaking me, he showed me what beauty really is. It's not what people see, it's what survives." In the crowd, Gideon lowered his gaze. Lena's tone softened. "I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it ends its power over you." Applause began softly, building into a wave. But before she could finish, a sudden noise rippled through the hall. A man at the back of the room, Blake Monroe, the same drunk who had ripped off her mask weeks before, had slipped past security. His face was flushed, his voice slurred. "You call this a charity?" he shouted. "It's a circus. A billionaire buys forgiveness and the waitress gets famous." Gasps spread. Cameras turned. Security started toward him, but Lena raised her hand. "It's okay," she said into the microphone. Blake sneered. "You think people really care about your sob story?" Lena took a breath. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice, calm and unwavering, filled the room. "No, Mr. Monroe. People care because we've all been burned by something: fire, words, loss. But only some of us learn to rebuild." The crowd erupted into applause. Blake froze, then was quietly escorted out. Lena stepped back from the mic, the spotlight warm on her face. Gideon was on his feet, clapping, eyes wet, not from guilt anymore, but from pride. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the lights dimmed, Gideon found her by the window overlooking the city. "You didn't just speak," he said quietly. "You set us free." Lena smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for us. I did it for everyone still hiding." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights glimmered on the wet pavement. Reflections of fire transformed into something brighter, something reborn. And for the first time, neither of them felt the need to hide from the light. The morning after the Phoenix Gala, the world had a new hero, and it wasn't the billionaire. Every headline told the same story. The waitress who changed a billionaire's heart. The masked woman who spoke for millions. But while the internet turned her into a symbol, Lena Carter sat in her tiny kitchen in Queens, barefoot, drinking instant coffee. The fame felt surreal, almost cruel. People called her brave, but they didn't see the bills stacked on her table, or Eli coughing in the next room. Her phone buzzed again, hundreds of messages from reporters, producers, even brands offering endorsements. One message stood out, though. It was from Gideon Voss. "I'd like to see you. It's not about business. Please." She sighed. She should have ignored it. But curiosity, or maybe forgiveness, pulled stronger than pride. When she arrived at his office, she was surprised. Gone were the marble floors and gold accents she'd seen in magazines. The place looked stripped down, almost bare, like a man starting over. Gideon greeted her at the door himself. "You came." "Not for long," she replied. "What do you need, Mr. Voss?" "Just Gideon," he said softly. "Please." He gestured for her to sit, but she stayed standing. "Say what you came to say." He nodded, taking a breath. "The foundation raised $12 million last night, enough to fund 3 burn units and scholarships for survivors. It wouldn't have happened without you." That's not true," she said. "People donated because they believed in the cause, not me." "Maybe," he said, "but they listened because of you." He hesitated, then pushed a folder across his desk. "This is for you." Lena frowned. "What is it?" "Ownership papers. Half the foundation. It's yours." She froze. "Half? Are you insane?" He met her eyes. "You built it with me. You spoke when I couldn't. It should belong to you." Lena shook her head. "I didn't do this for ownership or recognition. I did it because people like me don't get heard." "That's exactly why you should take it," Gideon said. Because people like you deserve to be heard. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of city traffic outside. You think this makes up for what you did to me? She asked. He looked down. No, nothing can. But I can make sure what I did never happens again. Oh? She studied him, the man who had once laughed at her, now stripped of ego. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They were human. You really mean it, don't you? She said. He nodded. Every word. Lena looked at the folder, then back at him. You know, when you first called me ugly, I believed you. For a second, I thought maybe I'd forgotten what beauty meant. Gideon's throat tightened. And now? She smiled faintly. Now I know you were talking about yourself. He flinched, but then unexpectedly he smiled, too sad and honest. I deserved that. She finally sat down, folding her hands. All right, I'll help run it, but on my terms. Name them, he said. Transparency, real funding, real people, not just headlines. And you no more pretending to be the hero. He nodded slowly. Deal. She stood, reaching out her hand. He shook it, the gesture simple but heavy with meaning. As she left his office, the morning sun hit her face through the glass door. For the first time, her reflection didn't look like a survivor or a victim. It looked like a woman who had rewritten her story, and this time, she owned every word of it. Autumn had settled over New York, wrapping the city in gold and smoke. For weeks, the Phoenix Foundation had become a quiet, miracle-free clinics opening, survivors finding new homes, and donations pouring in from around the world. For Lena Carter, it was purpose. For Gideon Voss, it was redemption. But beneath all the light, an ember of darkness still burned. Something unspoken, something neither of them saw coming. One late evening, Lena sat in the Foundation's small office, surrounded by paperwork and photographs of burn survivors. Gideon entered quietly, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. You're still here, he said. She smiled faintly. Says the man who lives here. He chuckled, pulling up a chair. I wanted to show you something. He placed a thin folder on the desk. Inside were old financial reports, black and white photos, and a newspaper clipping from 16 years ago. The headline read, Warehouse Fire Kills 2. Injures Child Voss Industries Donates to Victims. Lena's blood ran cold. Why? Are you showing me this? I found it while cleaning the archives, Gideon said carefully. The fire happened at a warehouse my father owned. I never connected it until I saw the date. Lena's fingers trembled as she scanned the article. A name leapt from the page like a ghost Carter family displaced. Her voice dropped to a whisper. This was my fire. Gideon's breath caught. I didn't know until today. I swear, Lena. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The paper blurred before her eyes. You mean to tell me the fire that destroyed my life came from your company? My father's company, he said quickly. He covered it up, paid hush money to avoid lawsuits. I was in college. I didn't. She stood, fury flooding her face. You didn't what? Look? Ask? Care? He rose too, hands open. I didn't know. I'm trying to make it right now. Right? She snapped. You think money and charity make this right? My mother died in that fire. The words hit him like a blow. He stumbled back, pale. Your mother? Yes, she said, voice breaking. She ran back into the flames to pull me out. She never came back. Gideon's throat closed. The truth was a dagger twisting in both of them. I can't undo what my father did, he whispered. But I can tell the world what really happened. No more lies. Oh. Lena stared at him, torn between rage and disbelief. You'd destroy your own family's legacy? He nodded. If it means giving you the truth, yes. She turned away, gripping the edge of the desk. For years, she had dreamed of knowing who caused the fire. She'd imagined revenge, justice, closure. But standing here, facing the man who had once been her enemy, she only felt hollow. Lena, he said softly, I'll hold a press conference. I'll confess everything. You deserve that. She closed her eyes. You don't get to decide what I deserve. Not anymore. He nodded, accepting the blow. Then tell me what you want. Lena looked up, eyes wet but fierce. I want you to live with it, not erase it, not hide behind guilt. Live with it and do better. He swallowed hard. I will. She picked up the folder, her hand steady now. Then this stays with me. My story. My choice. As she left the office, Gideon stood motionless in the dim light, the ghosts of his father's empire surrounding him. And for the first time he realized redemption wasn't about being forgiven. It was about carrying the fire without letting it burn you again. The next morning, New York woke up to chaos. Every news channel, every business outlet, every trending tag carried the same breaking story. Voss Industries under investigation for 16-year cover up of deadly fire. Lena sat on the edge of her bed, the folder from last night open beside her. She hadn't leaked it. She didn't have to. Gideon had done it himself. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Texts from reporters, lawyers, activists, even a message from Maria, her friend from the Aurelia. He actually did it. He told the world. Eli, sitting at the small kitchen table, looked up from the TV. You knew about this before everyone else? Lena nodded slowly. He told me last night. Then he meant it, Eli said. He's really trying to fix it. She sighed. It doesn't fix Mom being gone. No, he said quietly. But maybe it stops someone else from losing theirs. On the screen, Gideon's face appeared no suit, no tie, just a man stripped bare. Reporters shouted questions as he stood behind a podium outside the courthouse. I am here, he said firmly, to admit what my father's company did. 16 years ago, negligence at one of our storage facilities led to a fire that took 2 lives and injured a child. The Carter family deserved truth, not silence. My family buried it. That ends today. The crowd roared with questions, but Gideon didn't flinch. I can't undo what happened, he continued, but I can give the victims' families every piece of documentation, every cent of reparation, and every ounce of honesty they were denied. To Miss Lena Carter, he paused, his voice faltering for the first time. I owe more than an apology. I owe the truth that took her whole life to find. Lena turned off the TV, her hands shaking. Eli watched her. You should go see him. No, she whispered. He doesn't need me there. This is his moment. But deep down, she wasn't sure if the ache in her chest was pride or grief. Hours later, outside the courthouse, cameras still swarmed as Gideon stepped down from the steps. He looked exhausted, but lighter. Reporters shouted, Mr. Voss, what happens to the company now? He stopped. Whatever happens, it will finally be honest. That night, the city glowed with headlines and debate. Some called him brave, others called him foolish, but for the first time, no one called him heartless. Meanwhile, Lena walked through her old neighborhood in Brooklyn, the one rebuilt after the fire. The corner where her house once stood was now a playground. Children laughed under bright lights where ashes had once fallen. She sat on a bench, breathing in the cool air. A voice startled her. Beautiful, isn't it? It was Gideon. No security, no cameras, just him. You shouldn't be here, she said. I needed to see it, he replied. The place that started everything. And she studied him quietly. You did what you said you would. You told the truth. He nodded. It felt like walking into the fire myself. Lena looked at the playground again. Funny thing about fire, it destroys. But it also clears the ground for something new. He glanced at her. Do you think I deserve that kind of new start? She hesitated. That's not for me to decide. You just have to keep walking through the smoke until you can breathe again. He smiled faintly. You always know how to say the thing that hurts and heals at the same time. She stood, hands in her coat pockets. Good. Then, listen to this one. He raised an eyebrow. You may have started the fire, Gideon, she said, her voice low but firm. But I'm the one who learned how to survive it. And as she walked away into the cold November night, it was clear the fire hadn't consumed her. It had crowned her. The storm that followed Gideon's confession was unlike anything the city had seen. Voss Industries plummeted overnight, stocks crashed, partners withdrew, board members resigned. Reporters called it the fall of a dynasty. But for the first time, Gideon didn't care about numbers. He cared about what came next. He spent the next few days in silence. No bodyguards, no press. Just him in his empty penthouse, watching the skyline that once represented everything he thought he was. The walls echoed with quiet. The kind of quiet that forces you to face yourself. When his doorbell rang late one evening, he expected another journalist. Instead, it was Lena Carter, holding 2 cups of coffee. He blinked. "You came here?" She shrugged. "I figured it was my turn to show up uninvited." He stepped aside. "You shouldn't. This place is radioactive right now." "I survived worse than bad press," she said, walking in. The apartment was stripped down. Boxes half packed, art removed from walls. "You leaving?" she asked. "Selling everything," he said simply. "Donating the proceeds to the foundation." Lena set the coffee down. "You don't have to burn your whole life down, Gideon." He looked at her, tired but calm. "That's the thing about fire, Lena. Once you know what it destroys, you can't keep pretending you're safe standing near it." She sat on the couch across from him, hands clasped. "What are you going to do?" "I'll rebuild, just not like before. I want to start a smaller company. Transparent, clean, maybe even..." He paused, then smiled faintly. "Let people smarter than me run it." She chuckled softly. "Now, that's growth." Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was peaceful. "I watched the news," she said finally. "You didn't mention my mother's name." "I didn't have the right to," he said. "That story belongs to you." Her eyes softened. "Thank you." They sat there, 2 people bound by tragedy, trying to find a language that wasn't built on guilt. "Can I ask you something?" Gideon said. "Go ahead. When you stood on that stage and forgave me, even after knowing what my family did." "Why?" She took a long breath. "Because forgiveness isn't a gift to you. It's freedom for me. I was tired of letting anger be the only thing left from that night." He nodded slowly. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." She smiled faintly. "No, I'm just done being afraid." They watched the city lights flicker in silence for a while. Then Lena stood. "I should go. Eli's got a doctor appointment in the morning." "Does he know what's happened?" "He does," she said. "He told me to tell you something." Gideon looked up. "What's that?" She hesitated, then smiled. He said, "Tell the billionaire he's not the villain anymore." A laugh escaped him, quiet, surprised, real. "Your brother's too kind." "Ugh. Or maybe he just believes people can change," she said, heading for the door. "Lena," he called after her. "I don't know what I'd be if I hadn't met you." She turned back, her expression gentle but firm. "You'd still be looking for meaning in money. Now, you're finding it in truth. Don't waste it." When she left, the apartment felt even quieter but lighter too. Gideon walked to the window, staring at the glittering skyline. The empire he'd built was gone, but for the first time, he didn't feel empty. Down below, a billboard for the Phoenix Foundation glowed softly against the night. "Scars don't define you. They prove you survived." And standing there, Gideon realized he finally had something worth surviving for. 3 months later, winter coated the city in white. The headlines had cooled, the internet had moved on, and the world predictably found new scandals to chase. But for Lena Carter, the silence that followed was a strange gift. The foundation was thriving. Eli's health was improving. Her days were busy, her nights calm. Still, something unfinished pressed at the back of her mind, like a heartbeat she couldn't quiet. That something was the past. So one morning, she boarded a train out of the city, holding nothing but a small bouquet of lilies and an old photo of her mother. The destination, the site of the old Voss warehouse, the place where everything had begun. The train rocked gently as the city gave way to fields dusted with frost. She stared out the window, lost in memories she usually kept buried. The smoke, the heat, the sound of her mother's voice screaming her name through the fire. When she arrived, the station was nearly empty. A cab dropped her at a quiet industrial lot, now overgrown with grass. The air smelled of rust and cold earth. The warehouse was gone, replaced by a new community center with a sign that read, The Phoenix House, sponsored by the Voss Foundation. She stopped in her tracks. Gideon hadn't told her. "Ma'am?" a young man called, stepping out from the entrance. "You here for the dedication?" "Dedication?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said. "They're naming it after the families who lost their lives in the fire. You should come in." Inside, the building was warm and bright. Children laughed down the hallway. A mural stretched across one wall painted flames transforming into birds of light. Beneath it, a plaque read, "In memory of Lena Carter. Her courage saved lives." Lena pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. For years, her mother had been a statistic, a forgotten name, in a buried report. Now, she was remembered. A voice behind her said quietly, "I hoped you'd come." She turned. Gideon Voss stood there, hands in his coat pockets, snow still melting in his hair. "You didn't tell me," she said. "I didn't want to make it about me," he replied. "This was for her, for you." She looked at the plaque again. She'd probably laugh at all this attention. She was never comfortable being called a hero. "She was one," Gideon said softly. "She saved people my father would have left behind." Lena looked at him for a long moment. "You could have stayed hidden. You didn't have to rebuild this." "I did," he said. "It's the only way I know to live with what happened." He handed her a small envelope. "There's something else." Inside was a photo one she'd never seen before. Her mother, younger, smiling beside a man with a familiar face. Lena frowned. "This is you." He shook his head. "No, that's my father. They worked together." She warned him about the safety violations months before the fire. He ignored her. Lena's throat tightened. She tried to stop it. "She did," he said. "And now, the world will finally know that." For a long time they stood in silence, the hum of children's laughter echoing softly behind them. Then Lena said, "You know what I've learned, Gideon? Fire doesn't only destroy. It reveals. It burns away everything. False." He nodded. "And what's left?" She smiled faintly. "What's real?" "Oh." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and slow, covering the ashes of the past with something clean. And as Lena placed the lilies at the base of her mother's plaque, the fire that once defined her life finally went out, leaving only light behind. Spring crept slowly into the city, melting the last traces of snow. Life moved forward, but fame has a way of looping back when you least expect it. One morning, Lena Carter arrived at the Phoenix Foundation to find reporters waiting outside again. Only this time, they weren't chasing a scandal. They were chasing her. "Miss Carter," one shouted, "is it true Hollywood's making a movie about your story? Will you be consulting on the script? Do you still talk to Gideon Voss?" She ignored them, smiling politely as security guided her inside. But the noise lingered, the old tension creeping back into her chest. Inside, Maria was waiting by the reception desk, grinning like a kid at Christmas. "You saw the news, didn't you?" "I saw the vultures," Lena said. Maria held up a glossy magazine. On the cover was Lena's face. No mask, no makeup, just her scars illuminated under warm studio light. The headline read, "The Face of Courage." Lena frowned. "Who approved this photo?" "Gideon," Maria said. "He thought the world should see you the way you are. Unfiltered." Lena sighed, half touched, half wary. "He means well, but I don't need another spotlight. I just need peace." She walked into her office, closing the door. But her reflection in the glass wall caught her attention, the faint silver lines on her skin glinting like medals. For years, she'd worn a mask to hide them. Now, she wondered if it was time to wear one again, not to conceal herself, but to remind the world what she stood for. That evening, she called Gideon. He picked up on the second ring. "Lena, I was just about to—" "Don't publish that photo again," she interrupted. He paused. "You don't like it." "It's not about liking it," she said. "It's about control. My scars aren't a symbol for your redemption story." He exhaled. "That wasn't my intention." "I know," she said, softer now. "But people love to turn pain into performance. I won't let them." He was quiet for a moment. "Then what do you want to do?" Lena looked out the window at the reflection of the city lights. I'm hosting an event for survivors. No cameras, no journalists, just people who've lived through the fire and made it out. I'll be there, he said immediately. I didn't invite you, she said gently. He laughed under his breath. Fair enough. A week later, the Foundation's main hall filled with survivors from all over: children, veterans, burn victims, and people who carried invisible scars. The lights were dim, the music soft. No speeches, no press, just stories whispered between strangers who understood. When Lena walked onto the stage, a hush fell. She wore the same black mask she'd hidden behind all those months ago. Gasps rippled through the room, but then she smiled and took it off. This mask used to protect me, she said, holding it in her hands. Then it became the thing people defined me by. But tonight, it stands for something else. It stands for every person who has ever been told to hide what makes them different. For every scar, seen or unseen, that tells the story of survival. Applause thundered. Some people cried. Others simply nodded. Their own masks invisible, but understood. At the back of the room, Gideon watched quietly, unseen, his eyes glistening. When the crowd began to leave, Lena walked to him. You came anyway, he smiled. I wanted to see what healing really looks like. She tilted her head. And, he looked at her, voice barely above a whisper. It looks like you. Oh. Lena slipped the mask back into a glass display case beside the stage, under a small plaque that read, For everyone who no longer hides. And in that moment, the mask stopped being a symbol of pain and became a monument to freedom. A month after the survivors' gathering, Lena's life looked almost normal, if normal meant juggling press inquiries, hospital visits, and endless paperwork. The Foundation had expanded faster than anyone predicted. They were opening new branches across the country, helping thousands. Yet peace still eluded her. Late one evening, she sat in her office surrounded by framed letters from people she'd helped. Her assistant had gone home, the lights in the hallway dimmed. Only the soft hum of the city filled the silence. She turned her chair toward the window and saw her reflection staring back, a familiar face, but not the same woman. A knock sounded on the door. Come in, she said. It was Gideon Voss, looking worn but determined. You're still here. Again. I could say the same, she replied. He smiled faintly. I brought dinner. Real food, not vending machine snacks. He set down 2 takeout containers. Lena eyed him suspiciously. Since when do billionaires deliver noodles? Since one of them decided to quit pretending he's still a billionaire. She chuckled softly and opened the box. I didn't realize humility came with soy sauce. They ate quietly for a while, the comfort of simple food easing the tension. Then Gideon said, The board wants me to step down from the Foundation. They think my name's still toxic. Lena looked up sharply. Are you? He hesitated. Maybe, but I'm trying to change that. She nodded. They're wrong. You staying means accountability. If you walk away, people will say you built this just to save face. I thought about that, he admitted. But maybe they're right. Maybe I've already done enough damage. Lena leaned back, studying him. You know what's ironic? When I first met you, I thought you were everything wrong with the world. Arrogant, cold, untouchable. But now, you're just… He raised an eyebrow. What? Human? Exhausted, she said with a smile. He laughed quietly. You're not wrong. Silence settled again, comfortable this time. The kind that only exists between 2 people who've already seen the worst of each other. After a moment, Gideon said, Do you ever think about leaving all of this? The cameras, the stories, the Foundation? She considered it. Sometimes. But then, I remember what it felt like to be invisible. I don't want to disappear again. He nodded slowly. You're stronger than anyone I know. Strength isn't what you think it is, she said softly. It's not about standing tall. It's about standing back up, again and again, even when you'd rather sink. He looked at her with quiet awe. You're teaching me that every day. She smiled faintly. Then maybe you're finally learning. He hesitated before speaking again. There's something else. My father's will, he left a private account. It's massive. It was supposed to be hidden offshore. I want to donate all of it to the foundation anonymously. Anonymously? She repeated. Why? Because I don't need credit. I just need peace. Lena exhaled, touched despite herself. You're full of surprises, Gideon. Maybe I just have better teachers now. She turned toward the window again, her reflection shimmering beside his. Two faces, one scarred, one tired, mirrored in the glass, bound by fire, truth, and something neither dared name. He broke the silence. You ever look in the mirror and see someone you don't recognize? All the time, she said. But lately I think I'm starting to like her. He smiled. I think the rest of the world already does. Lena looked at him, eyes soft but steady. Let's just make sure we deserve it. And as their reflections blurred together in the glass, the past finally began to fade, leaving only two survivors learning how to live again. The invitation arrived on heavy cream paper with gold lettering. The Mirror Gala, a celebration of renewal and resilience, hosted by the Phoenix Foundation. Lena almost didn't go. She hated galas. They always felt too shiny, too polished, like people trying to look noble while sipping champagne. But this one was different. It was hers. The first major fundraising event since Gideon had donated his father's hidden fortune. The team insisted she be the guest of honor. On the night of the gala, she stood before her mirror, adjusting a simple silver gown. No makeup to hide her scars, no mask. Just Lena, the woman who had once been invisible and was now the face of survival. Eli appeared at her doorway, taller now, stronger. You look like Mom, he said softly. Lena smiled. Then I'm doing something right. At the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, flashbulbs greeted her the moment she stepped out of the car. The city lights bounced off her dress, and for the first time, the attention didn't sting. It felt like light reflecting from a place that had been dark too long. Inside, the ballroom shimmered. Chandeliers glittered over hundreds of guests. Reporters hovered near the entrance, their cameras eager, but the event coordinator made sure no one got too close. And at the far end of the room, waiting near the stage, was Gideon Voss. He looked different, simpler. A black suit, no tie, sleeves slightly rolled. When their eyes met, the noise around them faded. He crossed the room to meet her halfway. You came, he said. She smirked. I almost didn't. Fancy rooms still make me nervous. They used to make me powerful, he admitted. Now they just make me tired. A soft laugh escaped her. That's growth. Maybe it's age? As the night unfolded, the speeches began. Donors spoke about resilience. Survivors shared their stories, and every one of them mentioned her name. When Gideon took the stage, his voice carried weight not from authority, but from vulnerability. Years ago, he said, I believed perfection was the price of success. Then I met someone who showed me that truth is far more powerful. Her scars told a story mine never could. He turned toward Lena, and the crowd followed his gaze. Lena Carter taught me that redemption isn't about erasing what you've done. It's about building something better from the ashes. Applause swelled through the hall. Lena's eyes glistened, though she tried to hide it. When it was her turn to speak, she walked to the podium. People often ask if I wish I could go back, change what happened, live a life without scars. The answer is no. My scars are proof that I lived. They remind me that fire can destroy, yes, but it can also forge steel. Ugh. The audience rose to their feet, the sound thunderous, real. Afterward, as the music started and guests mingled, Gideon approached her again. You were incredible. So were you, she said. I didn't think I'd ever see you speechless. He smiled. You make that happen a lot lately. They stood near the grand mirror that gave the event its name. It stretched from floor to ceiling, reflecting every person in the room, the powerful, the broken, the healing. Lena studied their reflections side by side. Do you ever think about how strange it is that something so fragile can show you who you really are? He nodded slowly. The mirror doesn't lie. We just have to be brave enough to look. She met his gaze in the glass, her voice soft but sure. Then I guess it's time to stop looking back. And under the chandelier's glow, two reflections finally became whole, not because they were perfect, but because they were finally true. The mirror gala was over, but its echo lingered for weeks. Donations poured in, interviews flooded the foundation, and for once the headlines weren't about tragedy, they were about transformation. Still, for Lena Carter, something unsettled beneath the surface. Success felt heavier than failure ever had. One grey afternoon, she stood by the foundation's large window, overlooking the city. The sky was pale and restless, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or break open with Sunday. Gideon entered quietly behind her, 2 coffees in hand. "You look like you're planning to fight someone," he said, setting 1 cup beside her. "Maybe I am," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "Who this time?" "Congress," she said, half joking. "They're cutting healthcare grants for burn recovery programs. Half our outreach clinics could lose funding." Gideon frowned. "We can't let that happen. I'll call the senators we know." She turned sharply. "No more buying influence. We'll win this the right way." He sighed. "The right way doesn't always work fast enough." Her voice softened. "Then we fight harder." He watched her for a moment, the determination in her eyes both fierce and fragile. "You remind me of who I wanted to be before I forgot what mattered." Lena smiled faintly. "And you remind me that people can change if they really want to." He leaned against the window, gazing at the skyline. "You know, forgiveness is strange. Everyone tells you it's freedom, but they never mention the guilt that comes after it." She looked at him curiously. "Guilt?" He nodded. "You forgave me, and sometimes that makes me feel worse, because I'll never deserve it." Lena turned to face him fully. "Gideon, forgiveness isn't a prize you earn. It's a door you walk through. What you do after, that's on you." He smiled sadly. "Then I guess I'm still learning how to live on the other side of that door." Before she could answer, Maria knocked and peeked in. "Lena, you've got a visitor." "Who?" Maria's tone turned cautious. "A lawyer, from the federal inquiry into Voss Industries. They're requesting full cooperation from you both." Lena froze. "The investigation's still going?" Maria nodded. "They're not after Gideon this time. They're after the old board members. But they might need your testimony." After Maria left, silence thickened. Gideon rubbed his temples. "If they reopen everything, it could drag you back through it all, the fire, the cover-up, your mother." Lena's jaw tightened. "Then let them. If my story helps stop another company from hiding behind money, it's worth it." "You don't owe them anything," he said quietly. "I owe the truth," she replied. He looked at her with a mix of pride and worry. "You know, you could walk away now. You've already done enough. You've rebuilt your life. Your name." "Gideon," she interrupted, "you once said redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about carrying the fire and not letting it burn you again." He nodded slowly. "You remember that?" "Every word." A faint smile touched his lips. "Then I'll stand with you, however ugly this gets." She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing. "You already did once. You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving anything," he said. "I'm keeping a promise." She met his eyes, steady, resolute. "Then we face it together." Outside, thunder rolled low across the skyline. Rain began to patter against the glass, blurring the city lights into silver streaks. For the first time, neither of them looked away from the storm. Because forgiveness wasn't the end of their story, it was the price they paid to begin again. By early summer, the courthouse on Madison Avenue had become the stage for one final reckoning. The government investigation into Voss Industries had unearthed decades of hidden documents, secret payouts, and falsified safety records. For weeks, the story dominated every news cycle. And now, Lena Carter found herself once again at the center of a storm she never asked for. The day she took the stand, the courtroom was packed reporters, lawyers, survivors of the fire, and a few former executives who avoided her eyes. Gideon sat quietly behind the defense table, no longer a man trying to save his image, but one determined to tell the truth even if it destroyed what little he had left. When the prosecutor asked Lena to recount the night of the fire, the world seemed to hold its breath. I was 6, she began softly. My mother worked late that night. I remember the smell of smoke before I saw the flames. She pulled me out through the window. The roof collapsed right after. The room was silent. Even the clicking cameras seemed to pause. Do you know who was responsible for the safety violations? The prosecutor asked. Lena's voice didn't waver. Yes, the records show multiple warnings were ignored by the company's leadership. My mother filed one of those reports. It was buried. And who owned the company at the time? Voss Industries, she said. Specifically, under the control of William Voss, Gideon's father. Gideon closed his eyes, absorbing the blow with quiet acceptance. When it was the defense's turn, their attorney surprised everyone. Miss Carter, would you say Mr. Gideon Voss had any role in this cover-up? Lena looked directly at Gideon. No, he didn't know, but he chose to face it when he found out, and that's more than most people would have done. The attorney nodded. Thank you, Miss Carter. When the judge dismissed her, she stepped down slowly, her heart pounding. As she passed Gideon, their eyes met briefly, no words, just mutual understanding. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. Microphones thrust toward her. Miss Carter, do you forgive the Voss family? Do you blame Gideon for your mother's death? She stopped on the steps, the summer wind whipping her hair across her face. Then she spoke, her voice firm but calm. My mother used to say that truth is fire. It burns, but it also clears the air. What happened can't be undone, but if this truth helps protect someone else, then maybe the fire was never meaningless. Her words spread across the internet within hours. News anchors replayed them again and again. Truth is fire. It became the headline of the week. Later that evening, Gideon found her sitting on a park bench near the courthouse. The city hummed around them, but for a moment, the noise felt far away. You didn't have to defend me, he said quietly. I didn't defend you, she replied. I told the truth. The world can decide the rest. He nodded slowly. The board offered me a settlement immunity if I walk away completely, but I'm not taking it. Lena turned toward him. You'll lose everything. I already lost the illusion of what everything meant, he said. This time, I want to lose it for the right reasons. She studied him for a moment. You've changed, Gideon. He smiled faintly. No, I just finally became who I should have been all along. A siren wailed in the distance, fading into the night. Lena looked at him, her expression soft but strong. You know, she said, my mother used to say that fire doesn't destroy truth, it reveals it. He glanced at her, eyes glistening. Then maybe this was the only way for both of us to finally see. And under the glow of streetlights, 2 survivors of the same fire sat side by side, no longer victims, no longer enemies, just people finally unafraid of the truth. The verdict came on a humid August morning. The courtroom was silent as the judge read through the findings. The former executives of Voss Industries were found guilty of gross negligence, fraud, and obstruction. Fines, prison sentences, forfeitures, it all fell like a gavel across decades of lies. When it was over, Gideon Voss stood beside his attorney, shoulders straight, eyes steady. He wasn't on trial, not officially, but in every way that mattered, his soul had been. And now, as the gavel echoed through the chamber, it felt like the sound of something breaking free. Outside, cameras swarmed. Reporters shouted questions, flashbulbs bursting like fireworks. Gideon ignored them all, walking straight to the woman waiting by the courthouse steps, Lena Carter. Their eyes met for the first time since her testimony. No fanfare, no speeches, just 2 people who had spent years walking through the same fire from opposite sides. It's done, she said quietly. It's just beginning, he replied. She studied him, noticing the calm that had replaced his old arrogance. You really mean that? He nodded. I do. The company's gone, but something better can rise from it. I've already started the transfer. The remaining assets will fund the burn survivor hospitals permanently. Lena blinked. You're giving it all away? He smiled faintly. I already did. I just didn't realize it until now. They walked together through the courthouse plaza, the noise of the crowd fading behind them. Gideon's car waited at the curb, but neither seemed in a hurry to leave. You ever wonder, Lena said softly, why we had to go through all of this? The fire, the humiliation, the guilt just to end up here? He glanced at her. Maybe we had to burn away everything false before we could build something true. She smiled faintly. You sound like you've been reading self-help books. He laughed, and for the first time, it wasn't forced. No books, just good teachers. She tilted her head. Your mother? He hesitated, then nodded. And you. They reached the end of the block, where the foundation had set up a small memorial garden, a circle of white stones and flowers planted by survivors. Lena knelt by one of the new saplings, brushing dirt from the plaque beneath it, in memory of Lena Carter. She'd like this, Lena murmured. She'd be proud of you, Gideon said. She'd probably scold me for working too much, Lena replied with a laugh. The air was thick with summer heat, but a soft wind moved through the trees, rustling their leaves like whispered blessings. Gideon crouched beside her. You know, my father used to tell me something. He said legacy is what you build, that outlives you. I used to think he meant money, and now, I think it's people. Lena looked at him, her voice quiet but firm. Then you finally built something that matters. He smiled. We did. As the day stretched into evening, volunteers and survivors gathered in the garden for the dedication ceremony. Lena spoke briefly. No notes, no script. This isn't about what we lost, she said, her voice clear under the setting Sunday. It's about what we found when everything else was gone each other, and the courage to begin again. Applause rippled through the crowd, soft and sincere. Gideon stood beside her, clapping quietly, his eyes shining with something that looked very much like peace. When the ceremony ended, the last light of day glowed over the new saplings. Lena turned to him. You know, fire can destroy forests, but it also makes the soil richer. He nodded slowly. Then, maybe this, he gestured to the garden, is what comes after the ashes. She smiled. Seeds, and as dusk settled over the city, the fire that once defined them finally became something else, entirely a story of rebirth, written in living roots and quiet grace. A year later, New York felt different. Not quieter. New York was never quiet, but softer somehow, like the city had learned how to breathe again. The Phoenix Foundation had become a household name. Clinics opened in 5 new states. The survivors' network expanded across the country. What began as pain had become purpose. And at the heart of it all was Lena Carter. She stood on the balcony of the Foundation's new headquarters, looking down at the city. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers, painting everything in gold. Below, people passed by without glancing up ordinary, busy lives. For the first time, she didn't envy them. She understood now that ordinary was its own kind of beauty. Eli's laughter echoed behind her. He was taller now, strong, wearing a volunteer badge around his neck. Hey, he called out. You're missing the breakfast meeting. I'm coming, she said, turning toward him. How's school? He grinned. I got accepted to Columbia. Pre-med. Her eyes widened. You're serious? Guess the hospital visits rubbed off on me, he said with a shrug. She hugged him, tears pricking her eyes. Mom would be proud. Yeah, he whispered. She'd say we finally made it out of the smoke. Later that afternoon, the board met in the conference room overlooking Central Park. Gideon arrived last, a paper coffee cup in hand and a small smile on his face. He looked different now, less polished, more human. The press had stopped calling him a billionaire. They called him the man who rebuilt what his family destroyed. Everything looks good, he said, flipping through the reports. Donations are up again. The clinics in Detroit and Dallas are fully funded. Lena nodded. People believe in it. Not because of me or you, but because it's real. He smiled. You always did know how to make reality sound noble. She smirked. Comes with surviving fire. After the meeting, they walked together down the hallway, lined with photographs, faces of survivors, doctors, children who had found hope again. One photo showed Lena giving a little girl a mask painted in bright colors. Beneath it read the words, "Beauty isn't perfect. It's proof." Gideon stopped in front of the photo. You changed lives, Lena. So did you, she said softly, just in a different way. He hesitated. Do you ever miss the old life? The restaurant? The anonymity? Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember how small the world felt behind that mask. He nodded. And now? Now the world's too big to hide from. Outside, the city began to glow with the warmth of late afternoon. Gideon glanced at her, voice quieter. I'm leaving the board next month. It's time. She looked surprised. You're stepping away? Yeah, he said. I'm starting a new project, solar, powered housing for low-income families. I think it's time to build something new from the ground up. Lena smiled. Seems you've learned how to build without burning. He laughed. Maybe I had a good teacher. They stood by the window as the sun dipped lower. The city bathed in orange light. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Gideon said, Do you ever think about how it all began? One cruel sentence in a restaurant. Lena nodded slowly. And one truth strong enough to end it. He turned to her. Would you change it, if you could? She looked out at the skyline, the golden light dancing across the glass towers. No, she said, because the fire didn't destroy us. It revealed who we really were. He smiled, quiet and grateful. Then I guess the fire finally did something good. Lena's voice was calm, steady, certain. It gave us light. And as the sun set over the city that once burned them both, the light stayed warm, endless, and utterly unafraid. So that's how our story comes to an end. And if you're still here, watching until this very moment, maybe something deep inside you has been touched. Maybe a small spark has found its way to your heart. Lena's journey wasn't just about scars or redemption. It was about learning that pain doesn't destroy us. It shapes us. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, the fire that warms us can also consume us. It is up to us to control it. This story reminds us that what tries to break us can also rebuild us, that truth and forgiveness are not weakness but strength. You don't have to erase your past to heal. You just have to stop letting it define your worth. Like Lena, we all carry invisible scars, but they are proof that we survived, not that we are broken. So, my friends, if her story stirred something inside you, take a breath and hold on to that feeling. Let it remind you that light always follows the fire. And hey, if this story meant something to you, like, share, and subscribe. Together, let's keep telling stories that heal, that challenge, and that make us believe again.